Thank you so much, very much, Zoe. Yes, our thoughts and prayers definitely go out to everyone that's been affected by those incredible floods and rains as well. Please stay safe. Right now, though, on your Feel Good Breakfast Show, we're talking some parenting this morning, and stress is something that you just can't avoid, no matter who you are. It's a reality that even affects children. And we've talked about dealing with stress in children on the show before, but what do you do as a parent when a child's stress is unintentionally caused by you, the parent? And this morning, that is what we're talking about. We're joined by Educational Psychologist Anel Annandale to talk about parental stress and the effects it has on children. Anel, thank you very much for joining us this morning. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Good. We need to sort you out with a coffee, first and foremost. Yes. Listen, what do we mean by parental stress on children? What does that look like?
I think you pretty much nailed it. So it's when a parent's individual stress starts to become so much that they no longer the resources and the coping mechanisms that they have it's not enough to cancel that out anymore. And so that individual stress gets transferred into their parenting role.
Sure.
And the way it looks, so in my practice, for instance, what I see is a lot of kids complaining of just this feeling of tension and unease. So often they can't really put their finger on it, or their parents snapping at them all the time, or the home situation just being a constant rush.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things they feel.
And it's scary. It's really scary because it's not something that you want to do intentionally, but it is the fact that, it's a very tense. It could be so many factors. It could be job security. It could be financial stress. It could be so many different factors. But why does it seem that parents and grown-ups are more stressed out than ever nowadays? I mean, is it our lifestyles? Is it just the way that things are working? What's the deal?
Without a doubt, it's lifestyle to a big extent. I think, with the advance of technology, we are also now reachable all the time and also expected to be reached at all times. So I think our parents were equally stressed, but they literally had all the stress at work and then they went home. They had no way of taking it with them.
Yeah.
So I think now it's this constant stress that we're under. I think, like you said, financial stress, all of a sudden our time, the demands on our time are so much. And
I mean, I can relate now that you've said that, because last night it was about 10 o'clock and I was there on my phone WhatsApping and my wife was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm working." And then I realized, I was like, it's 10 o'clock. Yeah. And here I'm still messaging people. That is horrible. And I mean, that contributes to a whole amount of stress on a different level. You might not even notice that. So how does parental stress affect a child then on an emotional level? If you take a look at the whole environment in which you operate, the children there, the snapping out, at an emotional level, what does it mean for these kids? I mean, how does it manifest?
I think the worst thing is that because it's a parental stress, so they're often very unsure of what's causing it. They just feel this stress, this anxiety. Emotionally, we see that they can become quite irritable, just lose enjoyment in the things that they were always super enthusiastic about, physically start feeling uneasy and not okay.
Yeah, and now the parent guilt sets in.
Of course, right?
And which contributes to even more stress.
Yeah.
And it is true. I was just saying to my wife that I feel so guilty because it just feels that I'm not doing enough for the kids. It's always just wrapped up in your work, your life, your environment, what needs to happen, and for good reason as well. I mean, you're trying to secure that future, but man, you got to be so careful. And Anel, thank you very much. We are going to have part 2 to this discussion as well. If you have any comments or queries, please contact us on social media, on Facebook, #Expresso Show. If you want to ask anything, we'll be back with Anel in just a little bit.
It's my Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Welcome back. You're tuned into your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso, right here on SABC3. It's your Wednesday morning. So good to be hanging out with you. Thank you very much for tuning in. We are continuing with our parenting discussion this morning with Educational Psychologist Anel Annandale, and we're talking about parental stresses and how that manifests in your children. So we've spoken about the fact that children get stressed out, yes, but what does it look like when parents stress and that spills over on to your kids? And thank you very much for joining us, and once again, so good to have you. Okay, cool. So we've unpacked what it is and how it manifests, but what are some of the common, I think, parental stresses that have children worrying a lot? I mean, we spoke about some of the financial stresses, job security, those kind of things.
We do. And I think what we have to keep in mind that it's generally something that originates outside of the child, so it's often something that's a big adult problem.
Yeah.
So quite often I have kids who'll chat to me about worrying about their parents' financial situation,
Sure.
or work security, or problems in their relationship. And what makes that so hard is that they don't have the capacity to actually deal with it. They've got no control over that.
That's the thing.
That's the hard bit, right? So
That's kind of a very profound thought, because they have no control over that stress, yet they are feeling it.
That's it.
And it's not theirs to feel. So what do you do then as a parent? Because you want to kind of shield them, you want to make sure that they're okay, you want to make sure that they don't feel any of those stresses. So what can you as a parent then do? I mean, do you just put on a happy smile or whatnot? But the thing is, there's always vibes. There's
Yes.
always vibes. How do you protect them from the vibes?
I think number one is just be quite prudent about what you share.
Okay.
I think quite often children overhear things in conversations that we don't mean for them to.
And I mean, they pick things up even from a young age. I mean, my boys are very young still, but phew, I can tell they pick up things.
And that ruminates, right? It sits with them without
Yeah.
us realizing it. So be careful what you share with them. I think it's very important that with children, we kind of monitor their stresses as we go. I think be very careful about not discussing specifics
Yeah.
about your financials with them, and make them part of the relaxation technique. You know, so often I see we get stressed, and what do? To de-stress, we go away.
Yeah.
You go on that spa weekend, or you go away on a
Yeah.
couple's weekend. And being on your own for a while is fine, but often children just get our stress side then.
Yeah, exactly.
Include them in a little bit of the yoga, a little bit of the
Yeah.
relaxation.
Okay, well, that's not a bad idea. Exactly. Make them part of the de-stressing techniques or whatever it is that works for you as well. Now, how can parents tell that a child is feeling stress? Because, I mean, you are going through, obviously, something in your life. It could be anything that really stresses you out. Most oftentimes, it's probably job security and financials. So how can you then feel? Because you want to make sure that your child's okay. How do you kind of assess whether or not your child is feeling stressed? What are some of those signs and symptoms that we should look for?
Because children internalize that stress, it's a little bit harder to see in them, right? So
Yeah.
very often we see it on the physical level. We'll see that they'll get cranky. We often see increased tantrums, increased frustration, regression sometimes. Maybe your child was able to do something even scholastically.
Yeah.
They managed something at school, and the next minute they're battling. Or the teacher comes to you and says, look, all of a sudden your child is battling to concentrate in the class.
Yeah.
Physically, we know that stress affects your immune system. So is your child getting recurrent infections, or has asthma popped up all of a sudden, or eczema?
Sure.
So look out for those external signs that something might be wrong.
Sure, it's scary to think that it can manifest in external signs like eczema or any kind of skin conditions like that as well. Final words of advice, just for guiding us parents in terms of what to do so we don't feel that guilt on top of the stress we're feeling.
And I think that's it. So stress is inevitable, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be there anyway. So don't feel any guilt about the fact that it's come up. But the minute that you realize it's there, it's very important that you address it as soon as possible.
Right.
And I think, you know, it's something we hear all the time, but you have to take care of yourself for your kids' sake.
Yeah, that's a very, very good one. You have to take care of yourself for your kids' sake. And I'll thank you very much for sharing a little part of wisdom. I wish we had a little bit more time to delve into all of this, but this is what we have for you this morning. That's your parenting discussion, parental stresses, and how to make sure that it doesn't spill over onto your kids. Stick around.